Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, as I imagine you have already guessed, Audie is not happy with me. I am just on his naughty list. And that's because Nutmeg's Christmas special came out and I watched it. Now, I know better than to try to watch something like this with Audie in the house, so I had to pick up my cat and put him outside so that I could watch it. And the look of surprise and betrayal on that little cat's face when he figured out that he was being put out in the snow so that I could watch a video starring his arch enemy.
There are no arch enemies in real life. Doesn't happen.
Doesn't it?
Well, at least he believes she is his arch enemy. He cannot stand the sound of that woman's voice, and if I hadn't put him outside, well, the last time I played a video of Nutmeg and Audie was around, he bit me. So we're not doing that again. My hope is that he will forgive me sometime before the end of the year. But am I expecting to see him in this video? No, I am not. I think I am just completely in the doghouse for a while. So we are going to take a quick look at the intro and we will be right back. So yes, we are going to talk about Nutmeg's Christmas special. And for those of you who didn't watch the video, but just got your information from other people, YouTube, and newspapers, a lot of people are commenting on this. Yeah, it really was as bad as everyone said. But before we get into this, I wanted to lay a little bit of the background, because I do think this is important. First of all, this special is at least a year old. It was done sometime in 2024. And we know this because Guy the dog is in the video. And it's not just, it's not just shots of Guy spliced in here and there. The dog is actually in there. People are picking him up and playing with him and whatever. And Nutmeg announced the death of the dog on January 7th of this year. So it's almost a year ago. And there are plenty of people who think that the dog actually passed away a few months prior to that. So is this Christmas 2025? No. This is probably not even Christmas 2024, but it was done at least a year ago. So that's important because people had been commenting on Nutmeg and the sock puppet, and they're looking very happy together. And yeah, well, I know they haven't been looking very happy together lately, but a year is a long time, and a lot of things can take place in the space of a year. Also, I do want to mention that the putative children were not in the video at all. And once again, video being done a year ago, the children, whoever they may be, have certainly changed a lot in a year. So putting the kids in is going to be another dead giveaway. I'm not sure how the scenes with Guy the dog made it in there, because that too is virtually announcing to the public, this is an old show. This is a show that was made a year ago. This is not a current season's offering. And I'm not at all sure why Netflix was dredging up old footage and saying, here, look. But I suspect that this was intended to be a season finale sort of show. Who knows? The fact is, we know there was really only one season filmed, split in half so it looked like 2 seasons, so everybody could pretend it was renewed, and apparently it's in everybody's best interests to pretend a new special was contracted. It's the levels of deception, fraud, pretense, affectation in this entire With Love Meghan series are so over the top. It's hard to actually tease out any truth in this. But we need to start off with that premise, because whatever was going on a year ago is probably not going on today. And we can't look at this and say this is a slice of current reality. Not even close. So let's start with what was going on. Now, the general framework of this is Nutmeg is celebrating Christmas with people who may or may not be her friends, some of whom she would just met, and said that within this special, that she didn't know them prior to them coming into the kitchen that is not her kitchen. It's just craziness. It is one of the most inauthentic and performative things I have ever seen. And the problem I have with this, and I think this is a problem a lot of people have, even if they're not able to consciously identify it, is it's set up to look like a slice of a real life with a full film crew who are interacting with the performers, and it's made on a set. It's somebody else's kitchen. The ingredients, why do they even bother to show things like the front porch and the shelves? This is not Nutmeg's house. And showing pictures of the jars of honey or whatever on the shelves, they're not her shelves. It's a very crazy situation that produces a lot of cognitive dissonance for me, and I would imagine it does so for a lot of others as well. So, we open up with Nutmeg going off to buy a Christmas tree. She greets the proprietor of the Christmas tree lot as if they are old friends. They are clearly not old friends. This is someone who is running a Christmas tree lot. Even if you know the person because you purchased Christmas trees in the past, you see them once a year and then you don't see them until the next holiday season. It was just so performative and so inauthentic and so needlessly dramatic. But we will get to that. And then we go back into this house, Nutmeg's alleged house that is not her house. And the camera briefly focuses on a glass of champagne. This is a theme throughout this special, the alcohol content. Now, full disclosure, I am not a drinker, so I would find any amount of alcohol consumption considerably beyond what I myself would do, but I'm not, crazy about it. It's not like I don't think anybody ought to ever be able to have a drink. But I do think that showing half a dozen drinks in the course of a 1-hour show is a little much. And to tell the truth, I'm starting to wonder if Nutmeg might not have a drinking problem. That has been alleged before. So yeah, something to think about. So next we see that movie clapper, just to make sure we haven't forgotten this is actually a soundstage and not Nutmeg's real kitchen. Again, adding to that level of cognitive dissonance. And then we take a look at Nutmeg writing on an advent calendar that rather looks to me like one of those back of the door shoe holders. And talking about how she loves these advent calendars. And of course, she's writing in her pseudo calligraphy on it for the children. But here's the thing. She doesn't even show how one makes one of these advent calendars. So any crafting in this show it's pretty much non-existent. Again, we'll follow up on that later on. And then we have Will Guadara, who is the husband of Christina Tossi, who did have an appearance in one of those regular half seasons of With Love, Meghan. And she is a chef, and he is apparently a hotelier who has written books on hospitality. Now, you might think to yourself, well, this is all about entertaining and hospitality. He might have something to say. No, he does not. He doesn't even have the opportunity to finish his own sentences because Nutmeg does that for him. But whatever it is he is saying is of no value. There is nothing important coming out of this man's mouth. No offense to him. He may be a great guy in real life, but he was just a totally uninspired guest star for a Christmas special because he had nothing to contribute. Nothing, zero, zip, except obviously to compliment Nutmeg. But then we have something of a taste of Nutmeg's over-dramatization. And this is just craziness. And people have commented about this. This is supposed to be just normal interactions, unscripted, but Nutmeg is treating it like she is Sarah Bernhardt on the stage playing Juliet's death scene. It was just bizarre. I mean, really bizarre. And I'm sure you can see that from the clip. It was so over the top. But most of what is going on in this special and in the season of With Love, Meghan prior to this was a lot of over-the-top dramatics. Gives us some sense of why it is Nutmeg hasn't been nominated for an Academy Award. Next up, we have the Christmas cracker thing. So I'm actually going to give you a clip of this with the sound because I think this is definitely worth paying attention to.
So, Christmas crackers.
Have you been doing them for a long time?
Well, living in the UK is just such a part of...
Is it a big part of the culture over there?
For Christmas holidays, for sure.
Oh.
Amazing that a woman who probably spent a total of 3 Christmases in the UK in her entire life is now an authority on traditional British Christmas customs. And do keep in mind that while she was in the UK, she was living on the palace grounds and therefore certainly was not visiting the average British home for Christmas. And yes, Christmas crackers are more of a thing in the UK than they are in the US. We consider them rather old-fashioned, but I guess the Brits do like them. But certainly, is this characteristic of what's going on in the UK for Christmas in the 21st century? I would have to say no. I think we can put that up on the shelf along with things like figgy pudding. Yeah, people's parents and grandparents may have made a big fuss over it, but do I believe young people today are celebrating Christmas this way with their families? Maybe some are, but no, I do not think it is the big deal Nutmeg seems to believe it is. And then we have Nutmeg's 2 girls, and she actually did describe these people as girls. We're talking about 3 middle-aged women, and Nutmeg is saying, oh, I hope the girls like this. It's like, what are we, 12 years old? Good heavens. And they're all in their jammies, as if it's a sleepover. And I have to say that this nonsense of let's get in our pajamas because that is some people's Christmas traditions did nothing but make Nutmeg look infantile. This is the sort of thing little girls do for sleepovers. And yeah, is this a Christmas tradition to dress up in your pajamas and invite your friends over? Not in any household I have ever been in. No. Families might do that when they go to bed on Christmas Eve, and I have actually known families that would get matching jammy sets for the Christmas photographs. But does that mean they are entertaining their friends in their PJs? I don't think so. That was just sheer foolishness. So, once they're through posing in their jammies, they are making wreaths. Now, the idea of making wreaths is interesting. It would have been nice if there was actually some instruction on wreath making, but I can assure you, you're not going to get it from Nutmeg's Christmas special. You can, however, tune on YouTube and go through the shorts, because you can get wreath-making tutorials on YouTube that are condensed into a 2-minute short that have much more information than you're going to get from watching Nutmeg. Because once again, these shows are not about actually teaching anybody anything. It's all about Nutmeg showing off and pretending that she is an elegant hostess and a master chef. And I don't imagine she really is either. But certainly, whatever she may think she is not a teacher, because you walk away with nothing. Next up, we have another non-tutorial about Christmas wrapping, how to wrap presents. I would have found this interesting if there was actually, a step-by-step instructional program on how to do some of these wraps, but there isn't, and Nutmeg is a terrible, terrible teacher. She cannot explain anything. That woman could not explain swimming to a fish. The fact is that she's terrible at it. And even just things like, she was talking about wax medallions. So you could put a little wax seal on your present. And she said, well, you make the wax seals and then you glue them on. Really? How do you make the wax seals? What do you use to emboss them? Where do you get the sealing wax? None of that information was out there. She's just picking up pre-made wax seals and gluing them on packages. And by the way, that was not the only time I looked at this and said, is she doing anything? Because even when she was cooking, she was talking about store-bought sauces. Real cooks do not use store-bought sauces. TikTok influencers won't even eat store-bought pesto. And I'm sure you all know what I'm referring to when I talk about that. So the fact is, this is just so sloppy. It's such a cheat to say, well, just go get a store-bought something or other and throw it in a pretty bowl. What? This is supposed to be a show about cooking and entertaining. I don't think so. So then at this point in the show, we actually have a guest worth watching, because the girlfriend showed up in the pajamas and made wreaths, and the previous male guest, Guadara, I believe, he didn't have anything interesting to say. But now we get Naomi Osaka. Now, Naomi Osaka with the right host would probably be a very engaging guest. For starters, she is of Japanese and Haitian American descent, a world-class tennis champion. And this is someone who clearly has a story to tell. She did mention, very briefly in passing, that she was involved in dress designing. But Nutmeg, who allegedly is a great fashionista, didn't even bother to pick up on that. Well, hey, the show is not about Naomi Osaka, is it? But that was frustrating. Osaka has a sort of very quiet, very low affect. She is the child of a Japanese mother. She self-identifies as Japanese. It's not surprising that she doesn't have one of those voluble, overly dramatic Western personalities. Not surprising at all, but still, with the right host, it could have brought a little out for her. But she looked like she just didn't want to be there. And that low affect against Nutmeg's over-the-top, over-dramatics was very jarring. And it's too bad. As I say, I think this is a woman who had a story to tell, and with the right host, she would have been able to tell it. So they paint a few plates, and, you know, this was like plates for treats for Santa, something like that. I walked away from that thinking, this is the sort of craft I remember doing, not just in Girl Scouts, but in brownies. And for my friends overseas, brownies are not old enough to be Girl Guides. That's that 2-year, there's 7 to 9. That's that 2-year period before you can actually be a Girl Scout, or in the UK, a Girl Guide. So it's little mini Girl Scouts, children, 1st, 2nd grade. That's the kind of craft this was. I thought it was utterly absurd. And again, incredibly infantile. There was nothing at all sophisticated about anything that was going on in this program. If it had been labeled as a children's craft show, I would have found that more believable, but of course that high alcohol content would have put the kibosh on that one. But I did find that disappointing. I would have liked to have heard a little from Naomi Osaka. And then next up, we have Tom Colicchio, who is a television chef, and I guess he has a following. I had never heard of him before, but he brought in a couple of his family recipes, which included salt cod and a beet salad. And quite frankly, I had never heard of salt cod or beet salads being traditional Christmas dishes, but I guess they are in his family, so hey, why not? And then Nutmeg talked about gumbo in her family. Again, not exactly traditional Christmas fare, but I don't think the point of this was to be traditional anything. I think there was a completely different point behind this. And that brings me to my next point. And that was Nutmeg was washing her hands quite a lot in this particular episode. I had watched, remember, I watched the entire grueling season of With Love, Meghan, and I can promise you that hand washing was not high on her priority list. But why is she washing her hands? So she can clap back at that whole Salmonella Sussex nickname she picked up, because people are tired of watching her stick her hands covered in jewelry into food other people are eating. And there was just a level of bacterial contamination that was suggested that most people are uncomfortable with. And all I can say on this is that whatever you say about Nutmeg, you can't accuse her of being a germaphobe. This woman clearly does not care a whit about hygiene in the kitchen. But she did make a point of making sure everybody saw this. She was washing her hands. Look, I'm washing my hands. I really do. The problem is she was washing her hands after she was cooking things and touching all that stuff, not before, which just tells you she doesn't get it. It's whatever it is she's responding to, she hasn't figured out what the complaint is. That was actually fairly comical. Anyway, it finishes off with this party, which is more like a wrap party than anything else. And a wrap party, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is the party they have when they have finished up a movie, a television show, whatever. And it's the end of the season and they want to have a party for the cast and crew. And that's what it was. Because this party, which Nutmeg was allegedly hosting, was not in her home. The people in attendance were not her family. They were not her friends. What we were seeing was a total performance. We were seeing a cast party. That's what we were seeing. And that, I think, was the perfect conclusion for With Love, Meghan, the series as a whole. A complete performance pretending to be reality. This is why people are saying there's no authenticity here. This is why people are rejecting this out of hand. Because yes, it is boring. Why? Because this is a woman who has none of the skills she is presenting. This is dull because she wants to bring people in, pretend they are all besties. I'm assuming because she doesn't have any real friends. And okay, does anybody remember the show Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman, back in the 70s? It starred Louise Lasser, and it was a comedy about a woman who had this miserable little life that was falling apart. And at the end of the show, as Mary is having her nervous collapse, imagining her life in a dollhouse. She sees the dollhouse. The dollhouse represents a perfect life. And she talks about how she would be spending the afternoon with her friends dropping by, and they would be doing needlepoint and discussing current events. That's what this looks like to me. It took me a long time to figure out what was tugging in the back of my head, and finally it clicked. It was that nervous breakdown scene in Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. This is Nutmeg's fantasy life. This is what she wants us to believe her life is like. Making fancy meals in the kitchen with her loving husband coming in to give her a peck on the cheek. And remember, this woman had the Italian chef come in and make what Nutmeg later openly described as Harry's least favorite foods. She's doing a whole television special featuring the apparently very few foods her husband hates. Wow, that really tells you what's going on for her. But yeah, fantasy life, and this is what she's trying to sell to us. She is saying, look at this. This is my life. No, this is your fantasy, Mary Hartman, and we're not buying it. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope you found at least the film clips a little entertaining. If you're thinking about watching it, please let me save you the trouble. Side with my cat on this one. It is just not worth it. You're better off spending an hour sitting out in the snow. All right, we're going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Thanks for being with us. I hope to see you next time. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.